everyone, my name is Shelby Hartman. I'm DoubleBlind's co-founder and editor-in-chief, and today we're going to talk about things to do on acid. Before we get into the video, I'm going to remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications if you love learning about psychedelics and never want to miss a video from us. Since acid first became a popular drug among the counterculture in the 60s and 70s, people have reported that it's one of the best psychedelics out there for socializing and creative thinking. You probably know this, but many musicians, such as the Beatles, famously took acid and saw their art change forever.
We're nothing but grains of sand.
I think I might adjourn to another dimension, take some LSD. You care to join me?
Yeah, let's do that.
Think you might enjoy it. Open up your mind to new experience, a new level of consciousness like we do because we are the Beatles. And there's no limit to what we can imagine.
Steve Jobs, the late founder of Apple, said he took it when he was younger to spark his imagination. Lots of people love taking acid at Burning Man, festivals, and raves to elevate their mood and help them stay up. And other people like to do it alone and with close loved ones, as like all psychedelics, it can bring challenging feelings to the surface and/or occasion a mystical experience, which you may not want to have in a big crowd of people. As always, what you do on acid is completely dependent upon what your intentions are. So we just want to invite everyone, before they do a psychedelic, to sit down, journal, reflect, and really think about what are you trying to get out of this experience. And that is going to help inform what you decide to do when you're on acid or shrooms or whatever psychedelic you decide to take. Now, before we get more into what to do on acid specifically, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the difference between shrooms and acid, because this is one of the things we hear from people all of the time. They're like, what's the difference? How do I know if I should take one or the other? The short answer is the length of the trip. Shrooms last 4 to 6 hours, and acid lasts up to 8 hours, and sometimes even 12 and longer. So people have asked me so many times, what's the difference in the experience? And I'm just gonna say that a lot of people do say shrooms make them more internal, LSD makes them more social and external, like that's kind of what you'll read on Reddit and the internet. But a big disclaimer here that I feel is important to say is that every trip is different and every person is different. And in my experience, LSD does make me analytical and creative, and I've had a lot of LSD trips where I literally just want to talk to my friends for hours and hours and hours about the world and my life and anything that fascinates me. But I've also had trips on shrooms that have made me want to talk, and I've had trips on LSD where I feel like just lying down and being quiet. So there's no way to necessarily predict how each trip is going to unfold, and you just have to be prepared for that. We often talk at DoubleBlind about set and setting, which is a popular term in the psychedelic field, and it basically refers to set, the mindset you're in when you go into a psychedelic experience, and setting, which is the environment that you're in when you have that experience. And we say at DoubleBlind that it's good to be mindful of where you're at in your life before you take a psychedelic, because if you're in a pretty good place and you're just looking to have fun, then you might choose to do something different than if you know you're going through a hard time and you might need or want support during your psychedelic experience. Definitely when it comes to acid, we've heard a lot of horror stories of, someone's at a festival or at a party and they aren't necessarily planning to take acid, and then all of a sudden someone offers it to them and they're just trying to have fun and they're like, sure. And then, 3-4 hours later, they're like processing trauma, they're crying, they're having just like they're feeling paranoid, they're feeling really uncomfortable, and they're surrounded by a bunch of people that they don't know who are trying to socialize with them. So just be mindful of the fact that if you are going through a rough time in your life, or even if you feel like you're in a pretty good place in your life, challenging material might come to the surface when you're on acid. So whether you decide to do acid at a festival with a lot of people, or you decide to do it in a tent with your best friend or in your bedroom with your lover, it's always good to think about what am I gonna do if challenging material starts to come up? And, especially if you're in a super crowded environment like a festival, I would recommend, even if you've taken LSD a bunch of times and you've always had a lot of fun on it, to be with someone that you trust and to kind of establish, like, if one of us starts to feel like paranoid or overwhelmed, like, what's our game plan? Like, oh, there's trees over there. We're gonna walk over to those trees and like sit under one for a minute and take a deep breath together. I want to say something else about set and setting, which I don't think I've actually ever said before on our YouTube channel, and I was thinking about last night as I was preparing for this video, which is that set and setting is kind of a chicken and egg situation. And what I mean by that is that the set you're in before the trip begins will influence how you feel about the setting. Like I just said, if you're in a great place in your life versus you're not in a great place in your life, that might make you feel different about being surrounded by a bunch of people you don't know. But the setting that you choose will also influence your set. What I mean by that is that it's worth considering that the music and the people you're around can profoundly shape the direction of your trip. And so sometimes a trip could actually go in many directions, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's just what you prefer. So we've had a lot of people say to us that they've only ever partied on MDMA, for example, right? And they're surprised to hear that it's a drug that can be used for processing trauma. And it's true that if you're on MDMA or LSD at a party, that you might feel like dancing and being social, but it's also true that on that exact same day, at that exact same time, with that exact same mindset, you could take those drugs with the intention of going inward, put a blindfold on, put headphones on, and the experience could be completely different. Things could emerge that feel really profound for you that you wouldn't have necessarily noticed if you were distracted by like the DJ or your friends. And if you want to be distracted by your DJ and the friends, great. I'm just saying that, a trip can go in many different directions. So what you do is also dependent upon what your intention is for how it's going to unfold. At DoubleBlind, we try not to create a hierarchy of set and settings. And what we mean by that is that we're not necessarily saying like, oh, doing psychedelics like in your bedroom with a blindfold on is better than doing them in a party environment. There actually are a lot of people who have had profound experiences at festivals on the dance floor. And it's not like taking LSD in a social setting is just for fun and doing them at home is just for therapy. I have had really profound experiences where like what my soul needed was to let loose and be in community and feel loved up on by the people that I care for. And I've also had experiences at home where I plan to be quiet and meditate, and then I literally end up having a party for one with like my paints and instruments everywhere. And like after the trip, I'm like, what happened to my house? There's paints and instruments everywhere. So you just never know exactly what's going to happen. And again, just want to emphasize that you should be prepared, do your best to set up your environment and to choose to do things based upon what your intentions are, and also just like know that there is an element of unpredictability. I started DoubleBlind because I was deeply passionate about educating people like you on how to safely and respectfully embark on a journey with psychedelics for healing and growth, if that's something they wanted, if that's something that they wanted. And we began as a print magazine, which is still our baby, and it comes out twice a year, and I'm biased, but I think it's really beautiful. And we also help hundreds of thousands of people with free education like these videos and the articles on our website. And unlike a lot of media companies, which are now putting paywalls up over their articles, we vowed to never do that because we don't want to lock people out of the information that they need to feel better. We also have a monthly membership that includes access to a community of psychonauts, conversations led by yours truly with experts in psychedelics, a subscription to our print magazine, and a lot more. So whether you've been following us for a while or you're just stumbling upon us now, I hope that you'll consider supporting us at doubleblindmag.com/membership. You can also find the link in the description of this video. Okay, I know this sounds really obvious, but looking at patterns can be incredible on acid. Acid has this way of sharpening vision and helping you to see minute details that you've never noticed before. I remember one time being on acid in my apartment by myself and looking out my window and being like, has that tree always been there? That tree has always been there. If you're on acid, you're often just seeing things in a new way, and also just seeing like minute detail. And so if you feel safe to do so and you're tripping in your house, you have access to a porch, a backyard, or you even feel safe to just walk around your neighborhood, definitely recommend that. Also, if you feel like maybe you don't want to leave your house or you're not safe to do so, watch Planet Earth, watch movies like Fantasia, or also looking at art books, especially visionary art by people like Alex Grey and Pablo Amaringo. I remember one time interviewing Alex Grey about the purpose of visionary art, and he basically was like, when you are on a trip, you often have feelings and thoughts, but you don't really have a way to validate them externally, and you don't know if anyone else has ever experienced something similar. But when you look at visionary art, it sort of creates like a universality of psychedelic experience. Like it can make you feel more connected to other people that have had this experience, or help you make sense of your own, because you're looking at the art and you're like, oh my God, I feel that, or I saw that. Okay, 2, acid is a great drug. I don't want to say is, I want to say it can be, because every trip is different, a great drug for engaging with fascinating ideas. Like I said before, I found acid incredible for analysis. So if there's someone in your life that you just love talking to about the universe, music, anything that interests you, you might consider tripping with them, asking them to be your trip sitter, or giving them a ring if you're tripping alone. Although we highly recommend being mindful of your phone usage while you're tripping, so if you feel you might want to give like your really brilliant buddy a call, we recommend putting your phone on Do Not Disturb or something, and then saving them as a contact that can bypass that setting. Okay, next up, hiking. Again, sorry to state the obvious, but hiking, even more so than shrooms, a lot of people have reported really helps them with endurance, energy, concentration. Like mushrooms, being outdoors on acid can be pure bliss. We're not going to create a hierarchy of nature here, people. Deserts, forests, beach, you name it. Just nature in general. Acid gives your surroundings almost like this high definition quality. But some tips and tricks. Please think ahead to where you're going and make sure that it's not a place with a lot of people. So don't pick a trail where there's going to be people walking by all the time like, hello, how are you? How's your day? Because acid, like I said, it really can make you feel kind of paranoid. And the last thing that you want is like, oh God, do those people know I'm on acid? Like just go somewhere where you know that you're going to have privacy. And if you're not sure of where to go, then talk to your friends, or even consider going to the trail before you trip and like walking around and kind of like seeing what the vibe is. I also want to give a big disclaimer here that unless you're an experienced tripper and you really know your dose and how to navigate the psychedelic experience, we do typically suggest tripping at home or somewhere where you can completely let loose and feel safe. So like this has almost become a cliche that you should trip in nature. Again, it could be really profound, but if you start tripping harder than you realized you were going to, you may just want to be in your bed. And this is like another horror story that we've heard from not a few double-blind readers, which is like, I decided to go hiking and then I was tripping too hard, and like, you don't in that situation want to have to get into your car to drive yourself home or like figure out how to get an Uber, right? Because that can feel like literally an insurmountable challenge in that moment. You might just opt to like lie down under the tree instead, and then like people are gonna walk by and be like, what's wrong with that person? If you're really determined to trip in nature, which again can be magical, but you also like aren't sure your dose and you want to have a profound experience, you don't just want to microdose, you could consider camping so you have a tent or a van to come back to. Or if you really want to hike and trip, have a trip sitter, a designated driver, or just do what we call microdosing, which is just taking a small amount so you're sure to stay in control. You could also do what I do and just rent a cabin in nature. There's lots of great houses in Joshua Tree. I love to go there. I love to trip on acid. I can walk around in the desert as much as I want, and then I can just come right back to my bed if I feel like it. Okay, the next thing we're gonna recommend is just making stuff, creating, doodling, writing, painting. Whenever I trip, I love to have art supplies, a journal. Like I have a whole art box drawer in my house with like collage materials and all kinds of stuff, musical instruments. It's almost become a cliche at this point that Silicon Valley, probably in large part inspired by Steve Jobs and his use of acid, is microdosing acid for creativity, thinking outside of the box, and also focus. I'm not going to say, speak to sort of how I feel about acid at this time being a tool used for productivity in the workplace, but I will say that if you're stuck on a particular project, or you just like feel like you're kind of, you're just like not inspired to create anymore, and you have a particular art form, I think like setting the intention of I want to reconnect with like my creative side, and I want to sort of create without judgment, because a lot of times what gets in the way of us making art, right, is that like we're so stuck in it looking a particular way that we kind of like talk ourselves out of it rather than just like being silly and being playful and like seeing what emerges. Acid can be really great for that. Listening to your body and taking care of your body. In general, consider doing anything that is nourishing for your body to bring some warmth and shift into the LSD experience. So if it is summertime, you have access to a backyard, laying in the sun, don't forget the sunscreen. If it's wintertime, drinking tea, sitting by a fire, if you can make one safely. Swimming, again, if you're absolutely sure you can do so safely. And stretching too is never a bad idea, because as mentioned, LSD can really get your mind active, which can be great. But also, there's a lot to be said about the wisdom of the body. And sometimes we think that we're productively analyzing, but actually we're just ruminating, i.e. like going round and round and round and round. And what we need to graduate to the next phase of the journey, or to have that breakthrough that we're looking for, is not actually to keep thinking and thinking and thinking, but it's to sink down into our bodies, and whatever way, like slow, comfortable way that you can do that. If you're hungry or thirsty, something else you can try doing on acid is eating fruit. Okay, so shrooms, acid, and psychedelics in general are often known for reducing appetite. And snacks and other munchies you love on weed might taste like salty cardboard. Take it from someone who has eaten what tastes like salty cardboard many times on acid. But fruit is often actually an exception, and it can just be so delicious and juicy when you're tripping. Something else that you can consider doing if you're just wondering what to do, and or as you ease into the trip, and or if you need some shift from where you're at or what's unfolding, is to listen to a spiritual teacher that you love. If you find your mind going round and round and want to shift into a new part of the experience or just get inspired, then listening to a spiritual teacher you love who can kind of introduce some new thoughts into the ecosystem that resonate with you can be really helpful. So I love listening to Ram Dass when I'm tripping. And again, just make sure to have that bookmarked and set up ahead of time so you don't turn on your phone and get triggered by a bunch of Instagram notifications. And last but most certainly not least, one of the best things to do on acid is, wait for it, nothing. You heard me right. A lot of professional facilitators like to start trips in silence. Acid does wild things to the brain: distortions of space and time, emergence of memories and thoughts from the unconscious, visuals, and even connection with the divine. All from the comfort of your bedroom. Does that sound like an advertisement? Seriously though, sometimes the most profound trips come from just going inward. And if you're feeling like you've been doing a lot during your trip, even if you are at a festival or hiking, you can always find a place to step aside, put a hand on the heart and chest, and just breathe. And this will typically help you come back to your center. And then you can decide what you want to do next from a place of more intention. And if that's dancing, great. And if that's going home, great. There's no right or wrong way to trip so long as you are being mindful of yourself and the people around you. Are there things you love to do on acid? We'd love to hear in the comments below. And if you love this video, don't forget to subscribe or check out our articles at doubleblindmag.com. Bon voyage!